So the question we're trying to answer here is, how faithful is Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein to Mary Shelley's classic gothic novel? Please join the conversation. Hey everybody, welcome to D3 Reads. It's Eric. Thanks so much for joining. If you're a returning viewer, thanks so much for subscribing. We're now over 700 subscribers. I am so excited and I appreciate every single one of you. The conversations that we have here have been amazing, and so thank you so much. We really appreciate it. You're what make this so fun. If you haven't subscribed yet, we invite you to do so. Today we are going to go into our second episode of Book versus Movie. And today we are going to take a look at Mary Shelley's classic 1818 version of Frankenstein. And we're going to compare that to Guillermo del Toro's recently released version of Frankenstein and see how they marry up. So if you haven't read the book yet or seen Guillermo del Toro's new release, don't worry. We're going to start with a spoiler-free review of Mary Shelley's book, and then we're going to move into a quick spoiler-free review of the newly released movie. And from there, we'll transition into the conversation comparing one versus the other and determine how authentic and how faithful of an adaptation this really was. And at that point, there will be spoilers, but don't worry, I will put a big warning in there so you don't have to worry. I'm not going to ruin it for you. I would hate to do that. Okay? Why don't we go ahead and get started? Let's kick it off with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Now we're going to talk the 1818 version that she published, the original rendition of Frankenstein. Now, a couple years after it became popular, Mary Shelley revised it and re-released it, I think in the early 1820s, and then in the 1830s, she kind of tweaked it again. My understanding is she really kind of developed some of the hubris of man kind of themes that we find in the original. I don't know how different they actually are because I've only read the 1818 version, so we're going to stick with that. But if there are any significant differences and you're aware of it, you have read the 1832, I think, or 1833 edition, let me know. But we're going to be sticking to the 1818 version. Now, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is at once it's a gothic novel, and it's been called one of the best horror novels and one of the best science fiction novels ever written. And I've agreed with both of those. In previous roll-ups of the best science fiction and horror writers, I include Mary Shelley on both those lists. Now, I have had some people tell me that they think it's more science fiction than horror. I tend to disagree with that. I think the horror credentials of Frankenstein are pretty solid. And if anything, it's more of a horror novel than a science fiction novel. I'm not going to dwell on that aspect of it. I'm just except to say that I think that the horror element of Frankenstein is powerful and needs to be addressed in any good, authentic adaptation of it from whoever may be adapting it. Now, the book starts off with a masterfully suspenseful beginning. I know I was guilty before I read the book of kind of having in my head these images from classic Hollywood, right? That Frankenstein's this kind of lumbering creature that goes grunting his way through whatever story it is that Mary Shelley set up or whatever Hollywood decided to show us. And that's definitely not the case. But the book starts off with completely away from the dark gothic images that we see in the movies, and it starts us out in eventually up into the Arctic North. Mary Shelley incorporates at the beginning and the end of the book what they call the epistolary style, which is the story is captured for us by characters in the book writing letters. Actually, a single character. In this case, it's a British captain of a whaling ship. What he's doing is the story's kicked off by this British adventurer, essentially, kind of came into some money, and he's trying to explore the Arctic North. Back in the 19th century, there was this rush to explore the passages in the Arctic to try to get through the northern pole area from say in this case Russia, northern Russia, across the North Pole and into the Pacific. So there was this big rush to see who could chart that first. And the British captain, he decides he's going to do it. So he's out to collect a crew and a ship and to set sail from Archangel, Russia, and to go across the Arctic North. And so he's writing his sister on how that how that goes. As happens with those types of voyages, the ship runs into a lot of fog and a lot of ice up in the Arctic, and they end up getting stuck, or mostly, or at least their progression is impeded. And while they're there, or one morning, the fog kind of lifts, and they see this vast expanse of ice and snow, and they see in the distance someone on a sled being pulled by dogs, which was kind of unexpected in this remote part of the world. The next day, they find another person on a sled coming up to them on the ship, and this guy is half dead. He's dying of hypothermia. He's got one living dog, and so they pull him up on the ship to try to help him out, and thus they are introduced to Victor Frankenstein. I know that when I first read this, I was amazed, because I was expecting it to start in a castle with lightning bolts and all this other kind of thing, but this starts off in the Arctic. And so the captain of the ship is helping to nurse Victor Frankenstein back to some form of health, and this is where he gets to know him, and Victor tells him his story on how he wound up in the Arctic chasing, as he called, a demon. And then that's where the letters being written by the captain transition into essentially a transcription of Victor Frankenstein's story. And it is pretty cool. Now, as I said, this is a spoiler-free review, but a lot of the elements of the Frankenstein story, I think, are well known. Victor Frankenstein, in Mary Shelley's book, was the son of a well-to-do family. I think he was born in Italy. And he tells how his mother passes away, and how his father raised him and his brother William, and they had a friend named Elizabeth that they both grew up with, that eventually would become Victor's love interest. But as he grew older, Victor became increasingly fascinated with sciences, to include alchemy, which of course is a kind of a pseudoscience, borders on the paranormal. Throughout his experimentation, he stumbles across a way to create life. Now, the thing about this, when this is kind of the neat thing that to kind of put in the back of your head as we continue this discussion, is Mary Shelley famously did not spend a whole lot of time describing what this method for creating life is. It was something he wanted to do. He found it, and he created his creature, and that's it. You don't really, there's like a page maybe where it transitioned from researching it to having found it to having a creature right there and brought to life. Now, the assembling of body parts, that did happen, but there's not a whole lot of time spent on it. And as soon as he's successful, Victor Frankenstein is just aghast at what he's done. The creature, as he's called throughout the book, is an abomination in his eyes, and he just freaks out and takes off. He wants nothing to do with this creature, and so the creature winds up having to fend for himself. A brand new born creature with all this power is suddenly finding himself in a world that absolutely is terrified of him. So he has to kind of flee into the wilderness and fend for himself, where he has to learn how to survive. Now, eventually this creature, and I don't want to go into the particular steps on how this occurred, because it's just a really good read on how it progresses, decides that he needs to find his creator. Now, Victor Frankenstein makes some really bad choices in this book, and one thing leads to another till you turn into this cycle of revenge and hatred and fear and revulsion that leads to quite a tragic ending. This story, I don't know how well it's ever been captured in cinema. I haven't watched some of the more relatively recent, like the Robert De Niro. I think it came out in the 80s or the 90s. I can't recall when that came out, but there have been attempts to modernize and to be more faithful to Mary Shelley's work than, say, the classic Hollywood, the Hammer horror type movies. But the book is it's a strong horror, psychological horror type tale that is, I think, just very rewarding to actually get out there and read. So if you haven't read it, it's worth your time. Like a lot of writings from that era, you will run into some slow patches simply because they do a lot of talking. But the overall story just draws you along. And when the creature is actively clashing with Victor Frankenstein and his family, it's tragic, and it really is fascinating. So the book is good. The book is good, well worth your time, and it's quite clear why it has endured over the centuries since it was published. Now let's transition really quickly to Guillermo del Toro's version. This is still a spoiler-free. This will be a spoiler-free movie review, and we're going to keep it quick because we focus mainly on the literary side of things here. But I watched it just a couple days after it became available on Netflix last week, and I've been looking forward to it for a long time. One is because I'm an Oscar Isaac fan. I think he was a great choice to play the role of Victor Frankenstein. I am not familiar with Jacob Elordi, who is the one who played the Frankenstein, the creature in the movie, and he did a fantastic job. I think the image of the Frankenstein in this new adaptation is fantastic, and I think probably a lot closer to Mary Shelley's original idea. You think of the classic Hollywood with a square head and the bolts out of his neck, that kind of thing. That was Hollywood fabrication. The Frankenstein in Mary Shelley's work has long tangled hair, just like this one Jacob Elordi's version winds up having. And so it's really, I think, imagery wise, those two characters, I think, are very, very well cast. Now, the movie does include large chunks of Mary Shelley's original plot. You have the setting in the Arctic that kind of sets the stage, and you have Victor Frankenstein telling his story on how he came to be in the Arctic, chasing down his creation. But what they do here is they create a more faithful telling of the monster story too. It's kind of broke up into three parts. They have the prologue, and then they have Victor's story, and then they have the creature's story. Now, as you would expect with Hollywood or with a movie version, they really lean into the dramatic imagery of the creation of life, with the experiment itself that brings the creature to life. And so, whereas Mary Shelley really only found that to be a useful tool to create, a useful but quickly described tool, mechanism to create the creature. This spends a good chunk of the first part of the film to show how the creature was brought to life, and of course, it's visually stunning. And once the creature is away from Victor Frankenstein, he begins his life of discovery and growth that eventually brings him back to his creator. The movie introduces a different kind of motivation for the creature, in that in the movie version, Victor Frankenstein's quest is for eternal life, and his creation, and then the creature winds up having an inability to die. And so the creature, not only is he an outcast, with no one else to turn to like him, he cannot die, and so he finds his life one of constant torment. So that's partially what drives his desire for vengeance against Victor Frankenstein. And so the dynamic's a little bit different, because that's not an element that's borrowed from the book. That's something that's pretty much straight from Guillermo del Toro. But what you wind up with is a plot that's kind of at a 10,000-foot level, follows along with Mary Shelley's work. Guillermo del Toro chooses instead to focus on slightly different emotions. Mary Shelley's work ends rather solemnly and rather kind of dark, whereas the Guillermo del Toro's version, while it is still kind of dark and somber, kind of I think leans into restoration and forgiveness, if you will. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Overall, I didn't. I was a little disappointed in the adaptation, and I'm going to get into, when we start talking about the actual comparison here in a moment. I'll go into specifics, but I don't want to give you spoilers right now. I found, just at a high level, I found the story a little bit convoluted. I found the transitions a little clunky. The the scripting was, I think, a little bit weak actually. Whereas I found Elordi's creature was fantastic. I really liked his his ability to be the creature, and he had so much potential to kind of bring that sinister element of the creature, because in the book the creature is sinister quite often. He's a victim, but he lashes out in ways that are just absolutely, horrific. They shield the monster or the creature from a lot of that in the rendition that Del Toro gives us, and so they make him way more sympathetic than I guess he kind of was in the book, and I was a little disappointed in that. Plus, I felt that Elizabeth's character was tacked on. She didn't do anything for the movie for me. Matter of fact, a lot of the way she advanced the plot really felt kind of ham-fisted, and so I wasn't particularly happy with how they kind of developed her in the story. So overall, if I were to give the movie any star rating, I would say 3 stars. I was really looking forward to this. I thought it would be better, but that's it. That's the spoiler-free review of it. So we're going to move into the final part, the meat of the discussion. And so from here on out, there are spoilers. So if you haven't read the book, or if you haven't seen the movie, stop here, come back when you read it, and drop some comments and let me know your thoughts. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and build off of what I just said in the movie review. I was really disappointed that Guillermo del Toro decided to do what he did with this movie. Is it an authentic or faithful interpretation of Mary Shelley's work? No, it is not, and this is why I say that. In the book, the dynamic between Victor and the creature is extraordinarily tragic. Victor screws up big time. He screwed up twice, right? He created the creature to begin with, and then he abandoned the creature and basically consigned him to torment as it tried to figure out its place in the world, right? So horrible, horrible Victor. Should never have done it, right? The creature, as one would expect, became angry. And even though they're at the beginning of the book, now I'm in the book here at this point, in the book, you see it's striving to be at one or with peace with his world. He is hated and hunted after he gets shot after saving a girl from drowning, I think it was. After saving a young girl, his father sees him and shoots him because he thinks he's trying to hurt his daughter. And so he becomes angry, and he finds a way to hunt down Victor. And he does awful things. He finds William and murders him simply because he's like, oh, you're the brother of my creator. I'm going to hurt him. So he murders William. This is not a creature that you can 100% sympathize with, right? Definitely a product of his environment, but come on. And so, and this happens, he winds up murdering Elizabeth, right? So the creature is not supposed to be a completely sympathetic character. There's a back and forth as Victor tries, Victor's kind of a coward, I think, but he's not as bad as in the movie. See, in the movie, he's just outright a bastard is what he is. He accidentally kills people and he blames it on the creature, and he's just absolutely 100% awful. And so what Del Toro gives us is this picture of a monster that is abandoned by his creator. In this case, very much like Victor was kind of driven by his father to what is ultimate madness. I think you can see a similar thing with Victor and the creature, but the creature winds up being a little bit better than that. Not he hurts Victor, but as a movie watcher you can well, Victor kind of deserved it, but in the book it wasn't quite that cut and dry. And then the ending of the movie is completely different. In the book, Victor finally perishes before the creature can ultimately come to him. Victor was determined to kill the creature. He was going to, the ship captain decided he was going to turn around, and Victor said, well, if you're going back, I got to get back out on the ice and find my monster and kill him. And then he dies, right? And that's when the creature shows up, and the creature says, yeah, I would have liked to have been maybe forgiven here, but now that my creator's dead, I got nothing, and so I'm going to go out onto the ice, and I'm going to burn myself to death. That's it. It ends on a very dark note, whereas in the movie, Guillermo del Toro decides that wasn't really what he was going for. Victor asked for forgiveness, the monster gives it to him, and then Victor dies, and then the creature goes off to face a sunny new world in the Arctic. He can't die, he has no companions, and Victor just tells him, go off and live. And so now we're given what's supposed to be kind of a happy kind of ending after Victor and the monster forgive each other. Now, that doesn't necessarily make this a bad movie. It's just, it is in terms of, is this a faithful adaptation of Mary Shelley's work? The answer is no. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean, I did find weaknesses in the story, the storytelling. Again, I found Elizabeth to be not a very compelling character. I found Victor to be too much of a cowardly jerk, and William was essentially just a doormat to be walked on so that Victor could try to hit on his wife or his fiance. So I felt that. So ultimately, Jacob Elordi's creature shines in this. He did a fantastic job. I felt Oscar Isaac, though he was cast fantastic, I felt his character that he was given didn't give him much to work with, and so he did a good job, but it wasn't particularly compelling. So overall, I didn't think that this was a faithful adaptation, and I didn't think it was a great movie. It was good. It was solid. I'm glad I saw it, but that's pretty much it. So guys, that will wrap up book versus movie Frankenstein. Let me know what you think. Did you like Frankenstein, the adaptation, Guillermo's new version? Let me know. Let me know if you were bothered by the differences between the book and the movie, or if you found one versus the other to be the superior story. So and please, if you like these, let me know what you would like to see to be a future book versus movie. I got a ton of ideas, but I would love to hear your all's thoughts on what would be a good one. I've already got at least one good suggestion from the previous episode of this. So thank you for your time. Keep reading, guys, and we'll see you next time.